Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. Over the next couple of weeks, I'd like to catch up on some viewer comments, share some of what I've been up to recently, and talk about some recent Beach Boys related events, beginning with the new Beach Boys documentary, which premiered on Disney Plus on May 24th, 2024, and which I watched for the first time just prior to recording this. And while I was watching it, it struck me that there are three inherent challenges for anybody making a Beach Boys documentary. The first is fitting such a long, complex, rambling story into the allotted time. Second is making such a familiar story feel fresh. And third is finding a satisfying ending. The Disney Plus documentary does a pretty good job with its allotted 1 hour and 53 minutes. The story of 1961 through 1966 is told pretty well with a few oversimplifications and possibly some misremembering by the participants. It takes about 1 hour and 15 minutes to get us through Good Vibrations. Importantly, I thought Murray Wilson received a nuanced treatment, making it clear that, along with all of his shortcomings, he was absolutely committed to his boys and a vital part of their success. I thought the time compression worked against them when they talked about the rivalry with the Beatles and moved from Pet Sounds straight to the cultural touchstone of Sgt. Pepper, completely bypassing Revolver, which elsewhere McCartney has said was the album on which his writing was influenced by Pet Sounds. After talking about Sgt. Pepper, the documentary backs up to talk about Good Vibrations and the Smile Project, which to me would have left the impression that those works came after Sgt. Pepper, which I think it's important to understand they preceded. As far as making the story feel fresh, this is where I thought they did an outstanding job. As usual with this kind of documentary, they used outside talking heads, here consisting of academic Josh Kuhn, Lindsey Buckingham, Don Was, and the inevitable young artists giving the music their stamp of approval. In this case, it's Ryan Tedder and Janelle Monáe. Those clips are used sparingly and mostly function as a surrogate for public reaction or to advance the narrative. Rarely are they just telling us why the subject of the documentary we're already watching is important, which I find is a common pitfall of modern music documentaries. There are lots of great photos and home movie footage that I either hadn't seen or hadn't seen in this quality. I caught a few new details, some interesting perspective, and a couple of good anecdotes that I don't recall hearing before. Following Good Vibrations, the documentary picks up the pace for the remainder of the 60s and the early 70s. Blondie and Ricky each make some quick comments, but by this point they're moving too fast to mention Jack Riley or pretty much anything else. The last bit boils down to, we went to Holland, Endless Summer was a hit, we played to bigger crowds. After that, they might literally have just gone ahead and said yada yada. There are some very brief shots of the original members reunited at Paradise Cove, and then cut to Darlin live on the Mall in Washington, D.C. in 1980. The ending feels kind of abrupt, but I'm really glad they didn't end it with a long parade of testimonials from other artists, the way some other music documentaries have. And I'm sure Mike Love was delighted to get Kokomo used over the end credits crawl. Beach Boys fans will definitely want to see it. They managed to bring a freshness to the story which has me eager to watch it again, reawaken my enthusiasm, and reminded me again of just how great these very familiar records are. I think I'll be playing even more Beach Boys this summer than I would have otherwise. And undoubtedly, the Disney Plus documentary will launch many new Beach Boys fans too. I'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions, and I hope you'll pass them along in the comments section. Before we leave the subject, Martin Steele made me aware of this photo of Brian Wilson taken by Carney Wilson, who was sitting behind Brian at the premiere of the documentary in Hollywood. I found it very poignant. I also wanted to talk about the Glen Campbell Duets Ghost on the Canvas Sessions album, released on April 19th and featuring Brian Wilson among its many guests. Duets was created from songs on Glen Campbell's Ghost on the Canvas album, which was released on August 30th, 2011. Ghost on the Canvas, of course, was meant to be Glen Campbell's farewell album, coming shortly after his announcement that he was struggling with dementia. Ultimately, he made 2 more albums before he passed in 2017. I understand that it was manager Dave Kaplan's idea to create a duets album from Ghost on the Canvas. The first artist to sign on was Elton John, followed by Sting. Their participation made it easier to get other artists to sign on to the project. I'm not clear exactly when the new recordings were made, but I understand a lot of the work was done remotely due to COVID restrictions, so we're probably talking about 2020 or 2021. Generally, producers Dave Kaplan and Julian Raymond selected the songs for each artist to add their vocal to. When it came to Brian Wilson, he apparently rejected the original choice and requested the track Strong instead, saying he wanted to do it as an homage to I Guess I'm Dumb, which of course is the obscure but outstanding single that Brian co-wrote and produced for Glen Campbell in 1965. Most of the tracks on Duets are pretty much the originals with some remixing to make room for the guest vocalists. As the additional credits section of the Duets liner notes makes clear, Strong is different, having been largely rearranged and re-recorded by Brian Wilson's band. The original version of Strong on Ghost on the Canvas featured the Dandy Warhols, specifically Peter Holmstrom on electric guitar and Courtney Taylor on keyboards. If you're not familiar with Strong, which I wasn't, you might want to do what I did, which is listen to the original first and then listen to the Duets version with Brian. The original opens with a big electric guitar sound and an alt-psychedelic feeling. Strings come in, momentarily making it sound like one of Campbell's early hits, but they quickly turn overblown and bombastic, making the backing track sound more like a James Bond theme. On the choruses, it goes back to the alt-psychedelic electric guitar and keyboard. There are some high howling vocals in the background, and it ends up as some Everything But the Kitchen Sink production, which to me sounds overblown, confused, and really like it's trying a little too hard to be portentous. Campbell's vocal is very nice and very pure. The Duets version opens with acoustic piano instead of electric guitar, with strings and some very Brian Wilson-esque backing vocals coming in very early and lasting throughout. The horn section clearly and unmistakably references I Guess I'm Dumb. Ironically, what Strong as a song seems to lack is a strong ending. The original tries to compensate by throwing everything in the world in it and cranking up the volume. The Duets version opts for a 50-second coda, which is better, but I find it mildly unsatisfying that the song seems to build and then just kind of recede. It's nice to hear Brian's vocal. It's used sparingly but distinctively. And of course, hearing the voices of these two old friends together is especially moving in light of Brian's own recently disclosed struggle with dementia. The standout of the Duets version is the arrangement. It's much clearer, more focused, and I'll just go ahead and say better than the original. Listen to both and I think you'll agree. It's brilliant how Brian and his band have transformed it into an excellent and unexpected bookend to I Guess I'm Dumb. Recently, I had a chance to spend some time in Los Angeles. As I mentioned before, I lived there between 1985 and 2001. I got to catch up with some old friends. I did a lot of browsing at the numerous record stores in the area and picked up a few things. I also had lunch with our friend Chris Murray, who I met out in Sierra Madre for some great food, great conversation, and some great scenery. I think you can make out those mountains in the background, which are really impressive and really beautiful. Thanks again, Chris, for coming out to meet me. It was a great time, and I hope we can do it again one of these days. I also did some taping at a few historic Beach Boys sites. On my first day, I started with a drive down to Hawthorne. I've arrived in Hawthorne, California, and I'm looking for the Beach Boys monument. It's got to be around here somewhere. As you can see, I'm actually at the corner of 119th Street and Kornblum Avenue in Hawthorne, California. And right across the street here is the Beach Boys monument. So here I am at the Beach Boy Monument, 3701 West 119th Street in Hawthorne, California. I'm sure like I have, you've probably seen pictures of it. This is the first time I've ever actually been here. It's nice to see it's in good repair. It's not tagged with graffiti or anything like that. It's in really nice shape. The names of the people who contributed are on it, and some of which I recognize, some of which I don't, of course. I'm going to take a closer look at that in a minute. And also, of course, you can see behind me here is the freeway that they tore the house down to make room for in the 80s. The monument was dedicated on May 20th, 2005 in a ceremony attended by Al Jardine, David Marks, and Brian Wilson. I'll also pan around in a minute and show you the neighborhood because I was really curious to get a sense of what the place was like. I'll try to give you a little sense of that in just a minute. I've moved across the street to try to give you a bit wider view. As you can see from these photos, I found some familiar names on the monument, including our friends David Leaf and David and Lee from the Endless Summer Quarterly. Here, I'll show you some photos of some of the names that I found that I recognized. I'm sure there are many more that I missed, but this will give you a sampling. Seems to be a lot of local boosters contributed too, which is nice to see. The front of the monument, in addition to the dedication plaque, has 6 little faux gold records. It's Dennis Wilson, Carl Wilson, Brian, Mike, Alan Jardine, and David Marks are named on each one of those little plaques. I kind of like the fact that for consistency they've made it a 6-man group. I think a lot of people would have questions why there's 6 names on the monument and 5 Beach Boys if they just replicated the shot from the cover of Surfer Girl. And that is one long board, even for the early 60s. I'll pan around as best I can. I'm not used to doing stuff on location, as you know, but I'll try to give you a sense of what the neighborhood is like a little bit with a 360 pan. So bear with me, see if this works out at all well. There's my rental car. And as you can see, it's, you know, quiet neighborhood. I'm the only one here at this moment, which is kind of nice for me, I guess. And there you go. Hope you enjoyed seeing this as much as I enjoyed finally getting down here and getting a sense of the location. There's an airport right over here. I'll find out what the name of the airport is. I didn't realize they were so close to this airport. Maybe it wasn't there back in the day. I'll find out more about that. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Beach Boys monument. Hope it gave you a little sense of what it's really like on the scene. I'm going to move on from here. With that photo, I didn't mean to give the impression that the airport would have been visible from the Wilsons' house, but it was pretty close. The house was at 119th Street and Kornblum, which would have been right around here. This is Kornblum. 120th Street is the main drag through the area. The airport is right across 120th Street. I took the photo from the end of Kornblum. It's Hawthorne Municipal Airport, also known as Jack Northrop Field. It seems to handle small planes, cargo, and military planes, certainly not major passenger airlines. I understand it's currently also the headquarters for SpaceX. It's definitely been there since at least World War II, so the Wilsons must have heard a lot of planes coming and going over the years while listening to those 4 Freshmen albums. By the way, until I looked at the photos later, I completely missed the big, serious, impressive-looking spider that was inhabiting David Marks' plaque when I was there. Here's more from Hawthorne. I've stopped here at the site of the famous Foster's Freeze on Hawthorne Boulevard. So you can see the building is still here, but it's closed up. It's pretty dilapidated, and I'm sure it'll be due for demolition sometime soon. So I'm glad I got a chance to at least see the remains of it while I was here. And as you probably know, it was in this parking lot back here when it was a drive-in, famous among local Hawthorne teenagers, that the Wilson brothers with David Marks were sitting in their car having hamburgers when they first heard surfing on KFWB. It's the first time they ever heard themselves on the radio, and they described it as one of the most exciting moments of their entire career. So anyway, glad I got to see the building. Like I say, it's closed up, it's dilapidated. Don't think it'll be here much longer, but there's Foster's Freeze. In the next clip, I realized later that I gave the address of the brothers' studio site as 1554 5th Street. That was a mistake. It was 1454 5th Street. Rest assured I was at the right place. I just, as I so often do, misspoke when I was taping and didn't realize it until later. I've driven up now from Hawthorne to Santa Monica, and while I caught Foster's Freeze on its last legs, I'm too late for Brothers Studios. This is 1554 West 5th Street in Santa Monica, across the street from me, former site of Brothers Studios. So you can see it's been torn down. If I was guessing, I would say that they're probably putting in luxury apartments. That seems to be what's going up all around here. As you probably know, the Beach Boys started using the studio around December 1971. I believe the first things recorded there were for Carl and the Passions. This is a photo from the mid-70s. It was on the site of a former movie theater. In 1974, they opened it up for rental for public usage. I found a really interesting clip in the Billboard magazine for June 29, 1974, which says, speaking of rates, the Beach Boys have established theirs for their new Brothers Studio, also in Santa Monica. For recording Studio A, 24 and 16 track is $100 per hour, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.,
$110 per hour, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., $115 hourly Saturdays, and $120 hourly Sundays and holidays. For mixdown and editing, 24 and 16 track rates, 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. are $90, $100 4 p.m. to 8 a.m., 105 Saturdays, and 110 Sundays and holidays. Additional 16 to 24 track is $50 per hour, and additional 2 and 4 track is $25 per hour. Included in the rates are a Steinway piano, Hammond B3 organ, limiters, URI graphics, parametric, Cooper time cube, Dolby, VSO, live echo chamber, AKG chamber. If notification of cancellation is not received 44 hours in advance, 50% of the cost will be charged. Full rates will be charged if notification does not come within 24 hours. A 25% deposit is required of the time booked 24 hours in advance. A playroom is available for children. The studio was sold to producer Hank Sacalo and saxophonist Tom Scott in 1978. They renamed it Crimson Sound. Before I move on completely from the former site of Brothers Studios, I thought I'd give you a little idea of what the area is like. Over here you can see this is the construction site, corner of Broadway and 5th in Santa Monica. If you look up this way down here, maybe you can see where it gets foggy up at sort of the end of the street there. That is Santa Monica Beach. The Santa Monica Pier is right over there. So the studio very, very close to Santa Monica Beach and Santa Monica Pier. We'll move on. There's more to come from my trip to California. We'll pick that up next time. And before I forget, if anybody else is going to the Mike and Bruce Beach Boys show at Meadowbrook in Rochester Hills on July 5th, please let me know in the comments section. And if you happen to see me wandering around there that night, please be sure to say hello. It's always great to meet fellow Beach Boys fans. That's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to your feedback as always. Join me next time for more of the trip to California, and we'll catch up on some viewer comments. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Bye.